Grand Rising. What's up, y'all? Thanks for tuning in. Video number 3. Hope everybody's doing great. Um, we're here to provide some peace of mind and some pieces of information so that we could piece together this puzzle and be at peace. So, thank y'all for tuning in again. I'm gonna read just a couple articles just to really reiterate the last couple videos, just in case you check in for the first time. And after that, I'll go over the paperwork that helps you reclaim your names, your estates, your property, your assets, your rights, all that. It's very simple and it's very powerful. And once I read it, like I said, we're rebutting all these presumptions and assumptions. Basically, our whole life, if you're an American, born on American soil, obviously, you were born with unalienable rights and inherent sovereignty, and through ignorance and common practice, meaning everyone just going along and doing things without asking questions or without wondering why or without wondering the reasons or without even questioning if they should. People have just prescribed to things like licenses, registrations, permits, certifications, all these things that are foreign, and are unnecessary and irrelevant, and just honestly, just another rabbit hole of spending money and wasting time and hearing from someone else, how you should do something under their rules and under their authority. When remember, we're the people, we are the authority. We are the sovereigns in our own right. We are the living people that make up our nation, state, which in my case is Georgia. And, we are the employers on this land and soil. We are the owners of all the assets. We are the protectors of the land and the soil and our neighbors. It's all ours. And anybody we hire to provide us with some type of public service, whether it's governmental public service or fast food public service, it really doesn't matter. We just need to know that they work for us. We're the employers. They're the employees. Employers have rights and exemptions, and employees have rules, regulations, codes, policies, procedures, mandates, orders. I mean, all sorts of things. And then remember, even them, they're a man or woman first. So they have a conscience, they have free will, they have thought, they have the ability, to be empathetic and to, have a conversation and to have a meeting of the minds. So even if one of our employees, even if they get a rule or a regulation or a code or a policy or, etc., that goes against their beliefs or in some way trespasses or causes them to trespass on another's rights or property, whether it's their own, like I said, or someone else's, they have the right and the conscience to, disregard an unconstitutional and unconscionable order, contract, statute, etc. So, all right, let's get into it. So, this one's called Slowly, Slowly. And again, I'm going to post everything in the bottom because, we're all about transparency here. All right, 1. So you begin your life, if you're born in America, as one of the free, sovereign, and independent people of the United States. A Virginian, a Minnesotan, a Texan, a Georgian, etc. And while still a baby in your cradle, uniformed officers, conscripted into the U.S. Army, who appear to be civilian doctors, improperly seize upon your name and estate and coerce your mother to sign false information to the effect that you are a U.S. citizen, the same political status that you would have if you were a Puerto Rican, born in Puerto Rico, or one of the other insular territories like Guam or American Samoa. This status as a territorial citizen obligates you to serve the government and obey its every whim, to be defined as a taxpayer and subjected to selective service, and to need a license, which is official permission to do something that is otherwise illegal, for things like getting married or traveling in your car from point A to point B, cutting hair, right? Hunting and fishing. Obviously these things shouldn't be illegal. They're only illegal for U.S. citizens. That's why they need licenses. Americans have the right to travel from point A to point B unabridged. We have the right to feed our family. And, if that consists of us hunting for food or fishing for food, that is our right. It's unalienable. It's unable to be taken away. But the moment that we acquire a license for a right that we're already born with, we're basically putting it out into the air. The presumption and assumption that, number one, we don't have the right, and number two, we need permission. And then number three, what comes with permission? Rules, regulations, codes, policies, procedures, etc. Slavery, basically. So it also subjects you to the foreign British equity law and territorial court system, which is rigged against you so that the British affiliated bar association, right, members can rule against you 97% of the time via the abundant use of their judicial discretion. Remember, this is all color of law. Throughout your life, these vermin misinformed you, either deliberately or in ignorance themselves, and tell you that you have to have a social security number. You have to have a driver's license. You have to have a marriage license. And you obediently do what you are told. Every time you do, you are again unwittingly confirming that you are a U.S. citizen and effectively bear false witness against yourself and against your own interests, just to get along and survive in this ugly horror show world they have created. This is a game. It's like Monopoly. They got everybody living in the world of legal and illegal. But in reality, there's only lawful and unlawful. Legal and illegal is a game. It's something that requires consent. It's like Westworld or any other movie like that. If someone wants to put me in their game, I have to consent to it. I have to willingly want to be a part of it. You can't just subject me and force me to conduct commerce and to follow rules and regulations and codes and policies that obviously have nothing to do with me. It does require some consent. And unfortunately, ignorance or acquiescence, which is silence, or complying, unfortunately, that is considered consent. So that's why we have to educate ourselves further on our options and on the actual law. And we have, like I said, once we cement our rights and once we understand that we're born with certain unalienable protections, things that cannot be taken away from us, that are actually material possessions. These rights, they are intangible, but they are as much my property as, a phone or a card or anything else that I'm holding. So here's the first take-home message, campers. You are not a citizen of anything. Citizens serve the government. Nationals have the government serve them. So which one are you? You are the one paying them, or are they paying you? And if they are paying you, what is the payment based upon? If not your own hard work and years of paying taxes you never actually owed. So in effect, you have been kidnapped and trafficked into a United States territory and never told about this change in your official political status. You've been subjected to the Queen of England and the debts of the British Crown Corporation. And if you woke up enough to complain, they slammed you into one of their very own rigged courts where they could rape and pillage you and your name and your estate some more. But how could this be? How could this happen? How could nobody know about this? Well, they never told your mother, and you were too young to know anything about it when it happened. So why would you have any inkling that this is so? You couldn't know. You couldn't even complain about it. and the dirty, rotten vermin planned it that way. So here you are, transported on paper to Puerto Rico without a clue and without a paddle to get home, stuck in their foreign political status, subject to their foreign law, stuck paying their foreign taxes, suffering through their foreign bankruptcies, and living in their territorial reality. And this is all being done to you by what appears to be your government. But it's not. It's their government, which is supposed to be acting under a contract called the Constitution of the United States of America to protect us and our rights. So how do they get around their contractual obligation to honor and serve, and instead pillage and plunder? They just pretend to not know that you are an American from one of the American nation states. After all, your mother said you were a U.S. citizen. She just didn't know which U.S. they were talking about and wasn't told either. Remember, we showed yesterday there are three different types of, there's three different definitions of the word, United States based on Supreme Court ruling. So anytime they use that, they're using one of three different definitions. And one is the federal corporation, and, which is the federal zone, which is, for U.S. citizens. And one is the continental, states of the Union, the actual sovereign nation states. And only that one, is domiciled by American state nationals. And only those, U.S. citizens, meaning three asterisks, which we just call them American state nationals, only those ones have their sovereignty. And only those ones have their rights and their exemptions. The other ones are, like we said, U.S. citizens. So they're being labeled as employees, dependents, or corporations or franchisees of that federal corporation, which, remember, that's a foreign contractor that's supposed to provide us with governmental services. I mean, they're completely foreign with regards to us, except for that we hire them to do a certain job, 19 unrated services. And then you came along like a good little dweeb and signed up for Social Security. And everyone knows Title 42 plainly states that this program is only for federal employees and dependents and political asylum seekers. Well then, you must have sought political asylum, right? In Puerto Rico, no less. I hear the climate is nice there. Who knew? The government knew. The black-hearted, treacherous cheats in Washington knew. They knew. That's how they were getting all the gravy. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, they knew. That's how they paid for their newest whiz-bang jet fighters and germ warfare programs and everything else. The Clintons, Billy and Hillary and Jimmy and Ronnie and both Georges and Mr. Obama, they all knew. Everyone on their side of the fence knew that, and they used to laugh at us poor idiots stumbling around, still thinking that you were living in America. They called us sovereign citizens, a deliberate oxymoron, and thought you were too stupid to ever get the joke. They called you livestock and treated us that way, too. And if we are not mad enough to spit, and if we are not angry to the core, and if we are not ready to get up on our feet, then we aren't getting the drift of what has been done here. Go back to the top and read slowly again, remembering that these people are on our payroll doing this to us and our sons and our daughters. But we say they are Americans too. How could this be? Surely they wouldn't subject themselves to all these things. They wouldn't like slaves at the mercy of their own employees. Of course not. They had to leave themselves out, didn't they? Well, here it is, black and white. The Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act of 1976. You, my dears, are all foreign sovereigns from their perspective. Oh, they admit that you are in fact sovereign. They can't avoid that. They just pretend that you gave it all away and volunteered to be treated as a Puerto Rican and a debt slave and whatever else they wanted to say about you. Well, they privately retained all of their own rights and prerogatives as lawful sovereigns on American soil. You should see Bill Clinton's claim of copyright to his own name in the state. He left nothing out, not as much as a comma. So if you are a sovereign on American soil and you are owed the guarantees and protections of the Constitution of the United States of America, how is it that you are still being chased around by their bill collectors? thought to be part of their bankruptcy, harassed and addressed by their courts. Well, remember, all this bullshit is military. Remember the sentry asking for the password? And if you don't know the password, he can shoot you? It's the same thing. You have to give them mandatory notice that you are exempt and immune. A foreign sovereign with respect to them per the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act of 1976. And then you start taking names and checking dates, and you start holding these vermin feet first to the fire. You start telling them the truth, that they have no right to address us. You should also form up your lawful county jural assemblies and elect your land and soil jurisdiction sheriffs. Set up your jury pools. Elect your American common law justices of the peace. Many of you have been asking, if Hillary broke the law and endangered national security, and Obama illegally spied on Donald Trump for political purposes, why are these crooks still walking around? It's because they are claiming to be foreign sovereigns on American soil. These lousy pirates have beat feet back home and sought the protection of the political status they have stolen from us. The only way to bring them to justice is for all of us to wake up and remember who we are. Now, most Americans are peaceful, even docile people. They want to live and let live, mind their own business, work hard and play hard. Most Americans want and ask nothing much from the government, except to be left alone and maybe some pothole filling duty. But they won't leave us alone because they want to steal from us. They want to continue commandeering our lawful government. They want to call the shots and rule over the rest of us. They have their cozy little fraud machine and their bogus two-party political system all set up. They have their corporate government and their corporate military, and they would just as soon forget all the old folks back home. It's time to jack them up, clear to the ceiling. And all these bar association members, it's time to tell them where to get off, way off. Who do they think they are? Who asked for the services of a British court on American soil? What country do they think they are in? Is this really just Greater Puerto Rico, or is it about to become America again? With a big, flat, heavy foot stomp down on the Queen of England and all her busy little perfidious minions. Here it is, mandatory notice. We are American sovereigns, returning to our soil. We never really left it, so death and damnation to anyone who claims otherwise. All right, I'm going to read one more. This again, lawful person or legal person, human or man. You can be operating as a lawful person, someone who has rights and guarantees and protections and can own property, right? Someone on the lawful jurisdiction of the land and soil, where things are actual, factual, tangible, where you can actually see and touch them, and you know they exist, and there's living men and women. Or as a legal person who has no rights or guarantees and can only manage property for someone else as a slave or indentured servant. So if you're if you're a man or woman being claimed, to operate in the jurisdiction of the sea, you're being claimed a territorial citizen. And if you're being claimed, that you're acting in the jurisdiction of the air, you're being claimed as a municipal citizen. Both are legal persons. Both have no rights, no guarantees, and can only manage property, meaning as a tenant or like a maintenance guy, right? For someone else as a slave or indentured servant. And there's living men and women, lawful persons, who are domiciled on a state of the Union as an American state national, and they have rights and guarantees and protections and can own property. Lawful persons record their property assets and interests and retain ownership of their assets. So, what would be an asset? My home, my body, right? My children, right? My babies, my intellectual property, my biological property, right? My tangible property, right? We want to record all these assets and interests to make sure that there's a clear record that this is my property. This property is only to be associated with me. And if anyone's ever found to be in possession of that property, Well, this record is verifiable fact and evidence that, my property and my rights were trespassed against by another. Legal persons register their interests and give them to their masters in trust, who then own and control the assets held in trust. So if you register your car, your home, your business, anything else you would register. I mean, anything you register, what you're doing is you're giving up all interests you have to a master in trust who owns and controls the assets. And you, as the registree, are as someone who's registered, are basically just acting as like a custodial representative. You have no ownership, but you could take care of it. You could clean up the poop and clean the tables. Just don't worry about reaping any of the benefits. So the legal person gets a certificate as the donor of assets, which is the birth certificate, or a registration receipt, like a motor vehicle registration. The master of the trust retains both the equitable title and the legal title, and distributes the interest as the master sees fit. The legal person / donor stays on as an unpaid custodian of the property, your children, for example, and is accountable to the master for their job performance. Enter Child Protective Services or the Highway Patrol or any of these other public service employees, right? The only reason why they act or feel that they have any sort of authority over you is because you have these registrations. So you're acting as an unpaid custodian. You're acting as a donor or a legal person who's accountable to the master for their job performance. So if I'm, Child Protective Services, well, you registered your baby to us. We don't like how you're taking care of them. So, as the true owner, we're just going to take them. That's why they're able to take our babies away, because we've registered them away as chattel. And we never made a record of them even existing. So imagine this. Let's say you're 80 years old. If you were registered at birth and there was never even a record of you being born, your parents never recorded, your name and, your date of birth and, what county you were born on, what state you were born on. There's actually no record of you even existing other than as registered goods to the state of state, which is the Queen or the Lord Mayor of London. So the master of the trust, So now you see why it matters if you record or register and whether you act as a lawful person, right? Someone who has rights and guarantees and protections, and can own property, or as a legal person, someone who has no rights, no guarantees, and can only manage property as an indentured servant or a slave. I hope this explains my comment adequately for all concerned and shows everyone why it is essential to freedom and property ownership and control to establish and maintain your status as a lawful person. As a lawful person, you are the employer of all the legal persons. As a legal person, you are an employee, either a slave or an indentured servant, of the lawful persons. In a similar way, there is a disparity between human and man. The very name human means hue, H-U-E, -man, which means color of man, which means legal person, right? Because this color of man concept is used in the same sense as color of law, meaning it merely appears to be law and merely appears to be a man or woman. When you allow someone to call you a human, you are accepting the status of a legal person, a slave or indentured servant, and identifying yourself as such. Humans and legal persons have civil rights. Civil rights are not actual rights, but privileges that the master, allows his slaves and indentured servants. Because they are privileges and not actual rights, they can be revoked by command, executive order, or the stroke of a pen, suspending such rights. Men, women, and lawful persons have natural and unalienable rights that are part of their nature, granted by nature and nature's God, as the founders put it. Nobody gave us the right to walk, talk, think, move from place to place, or exercise our will. These are called natural and unalienable rights because they were not granted by men and cannot be taken away by men. They cannot be suspended or curtailed by legal persons. This is one of the fundamental differences between the foreign oligarchies perpetuated by the city of Rome and the Vatican and the lawful and honorable government of this country. They allow slavery and peonage both, but we don't. Therefore, if you want to be a slave, you can enslave yourself by accepting municipal citizenship of the United States. If you want to sell yourself into mercenary service or act as an indentured servant, accept territorial United States citizenship. But if you want to be a free man or woman, endowed by your Creator with certain natural and unalienable rights, enabled to own property outright and to travel freely, and to speak your mind and to be responsible for your own governance, then you accept the burden of being a state citizen and you paddle your own canoe. So just to reiterate, legal person could be, legal person is a U.S. citizen, a taxpayer, a trust, a corporation, an estate, an association, an agency, an instrumentality, right? All things that are, create, fiction, it's just a creation of the mind. Lawful person are living people, men and women that you can touch and see and that can speak and hear and the rest. And they have all their unalienable rights and their property intact. So, I'm going to read some of the paperwork. So first, when the founding fathers of the 13 colonies started our government, they each represented their particular land areas, and they formed what were then called jural assemblies, which were a group of local people who came together at their local meeting halls to discuss how to self-govern their country and nation-states under common law. Each state is a sovereign nation unto itself. Counties and nation-states across America are once again forming jural assemblies to take a stand for we the people and that will restore our lawful government. So are you a U.S. citizen? From the standpoint of the federal government, a U.S. citizen is a citizen of the territories and District of Columbia, which is a 10-mile square, and has been since 1864. Federal civilian and military personnel are considered U.S. citizens, while so employed. Political asylum seekers, African Americans who were never granted state citizenship, and welfare recipients, as well as people born in Puerto Rico, people from Guam, American Samoa, and the American Virgin Islands. If you hold a political office, you are a U.S. citizen. If you are none of the above, then you are not a U.S. citizen, and you are not obligated to pay federal taxes. So, part of the great fraud is, when they register our name, when our parents, sign that birth certificate, they basically make, 3 different bank accounts basically in our name. They do a Cesta KV trust, foreign situs trust, and transmitting utility. So these names is what would be called a straw man. And basically, they're all capital letters, which shows that they're a legal person. They're dead. They're not living. We took in first grade. In first grade, we learned about proper nouns. Uppercase, lowercase. If it's all capital, it's dead. It's either a corporation or it's the name on a tombstone. So what they do is, let's say my name is Nico C. Kuzi, right? Well, they have all capital Nico C. Kuzi. They have all capital Nico Christos, right? My middle name, Kuzi. And then they have all capital, just Nico Kuzi. So they have three different versions of the same name, and they've just created three different, trust accounts, basically, three different legal entities, legal persons. And this is what they use to, trespass on your rights on a day-to-day basis, because they're not allowed to trespass on your rights as the living man or woman, as the lawful person. So what they've done is they've press ganged us into a foreign jurisdiction, and anytime that, any of these agencies, right, any of these public service providers try to deal with us, they'll ask you for some type of identification, right? Well, what does that identification have? If it's some type of license or registration, right, or permit or certification, it's going to have your name in all capital letters, meaning that they're not actually talking about you, the man or woman. They're talking about a trust or a bank account that, bears the same name. So think about like J.C. Penney. What's the difference between J.C. Penney and N.C. Kuzi? See, there is no difference if it's got the same type of spelling. Now, if my name is spelled properly, the proper name, then, and you see J.C. Penney next to my name, you'll say, oh, well, obviously that's a business and that's a man. So that's kind of like the little semantic deceit that they use. So the way power is supposed to flow in America, it goes from the people. So the people, they meet and, they assemble, and, if they decide they want to change or fix something, they'll express that to their city, right? So let's say me, Brookhaven or Loganville or Monroe, right? Me and a bunch of my neighbors, we would get together, we would assemble, we would, have a meeting of the minds. We would put something on paper, some ideas down, or some rules or some laws, or some information we want to spread the word about. We would put our autograph, our seal on it, right? And then we would spread the word. The city, so this is how it starts. It's the people. They have all the power. Then the city has the time. And these are all unincorporated, by the way. We're talking about how it works on the land and soil jurisdiction. We're not talking about how it works in the incorporated, world of the sea or the air. So once you, correct your political status and come home to the land and soil, this is how the power structure will work. So the people are, the sovereigns of the nation state. They have all power. Then the city, they delegate power to the city. The city would delegate to the county. The county would delegate to the state. The state is Georgia, or Virginia, not state of Georgia or state of Virginia, just Georgia, just Virginia. They would delegate to the American States Assembly, right? That state assembly. So Georgia Assembly, Virginia Assembly. They would then delegate to the Federation of States, which is the international jurisdiction. That's the land jurisdiction. So all the international state assemblies interface with each other internationally. And the 50 state assemblies is the Federation of States. And then they would delegate to a Continental Congress, and then the Continental Congress would delegate to the feds, to any type of, governmental service provider. So the people are at the top or the bottom, depending on how you want to say it. As long as you know that the people got all the power. And then the city's got a little bit less power because it's made up of those people. And then the county has a little bit less power because it's made up of all those cities. And then the state is made up of all those counties. And then the state assembly is made up of, all nationals and citizens, all American state nationals and American state citizens who are in that state. And then all the state assemblies make up the Federation of States. All those assemblies, if they wanted to have a Congress, it would be a Continental Congress. And from there, we would delegate authority to the federal government. So you can see how it's kind of inverted, because now it's kind of like, Washington, D.C. is telling the state of states what to do, and really it's a bunch of corporations really too, whatever the mainstream media and the corporations say. And then from there, the state of state is telling, their counties what to do, and then the counties are telling the cities what to do, and then the cities are telling the people what to do. So it's completely opposite. And remember, it's only because we're not acting in our proper capacity, number one, and then number two, we don't know where we stand. We don't we haven't been taught the proper way. So we're living in this de facto world, right? This world it's like color of law. It looks like it, it appears like it sounds like it smells like it feels like it, but it's completely made up, and it's completely unlawful. It's acting of no authority. It's totally just made up. And unfortunately, us and our neighbors have been perpetrating, these invisible walls. We've been keeping them going. So the Federation of States Assembly is called the Continental United States, which is comprised of 50 geographically defined nation states, acting as a federation, operating as a nation on the land jurisdiction. This is the United States belonging to the free, independent, and sovereign people of the United States, described in the Definitive Treaty of Peace. There has been no Continental Congress since 1860, competent to actually enroll the states created by statehood compacts. There hasn't been a land Congress since 1860. We haven't sent anyone to Philadelphia, not D.C., Philadelphia, our actual capital, in a fiduciary deputy capacity to act on behalf of the land jurisdiction in 150 years. Did you know that foreign corporations masquerade as your government? In 1863, the United States of America Unincorporated was declared bankrupt by President Lincoln. At that time, a Scottish commercial corporation was set up, creating a British territorial United States doing business as the United States of America Unincorporated. A British territorial corporation doing business as the United States of America Unincorporated. The Scottish Commercial Corporation, the United States of America Incorporated, declared bankruptcy in 1907. In 1925, the Roman Catholic Church and the Office of the Roman Pontiff set up a Delaware corporation, doing business as the United States of America, Inc. The Scottish usurper called itself the United States of America, and the Roman Catholic version called itself United States of America. So no the, and both were phony, unauthorized, and criminal. This religious nonprofit ran up bills against our remaining assets. Our land has already been seized upon as a security for the debts of the Scottish corporation. They played hard and fast and bankrupted the lowercase the United States of America Inc., and then changed the name of the country to the United States Inc., all capitals. 2015, President Obama bankrupted the Municipal United States Corporation and thereby vacated the municipal government. 2017, via a domino effect, the territorial United States government was also bankrupted and vacated. Most recently, the government has renamed the country the United States of America Inc., now under UN corporation auspices, which are all private, for-profit corporations using semantic deceit, another name to carry on business as usual. The United States Inc. is a foreign corporation in the business of providing governmental services. Hence the reason it is called a de facto government. It is not lawful. What is the result of all this fraud? You have been enslaved from birth, through death, through semantic deceit of our names. What do we need to do now? We need to correct our political status, to tell the corporatocracy that we are not a citizen of their corporation. So we could do a basic package of editable forms, and that's the paperwork I'm going to go over. So regarding taxes, like I said, unless you're actually working for, in some sort of way, the federal government, if you're actually receiving federal income, it's the only reason you should be paying federal income taxes. If you're not, you need to do a revocation of election to pay taxes. So what that is, and I'll read it to you right now. So you need to actually send a letter, and I'm going to provide all this information. I'm going to provide the information for you to reach out to your state coordinator, and then you just tell them, you want to correct your political status, and then also going to provide a link to the land recording system, and it has directions on there cut and dry. But you want to definitely reach out to your coordinator so that you could schedule a recording, because you can either get your paperwork notarized with your state assembly, or you can just get it notarized anywhere. But I would recommend doing it with your assembly, just to create that rapport and to get involved with your actual assembly. So we do a revocation of election to pay taxes. So we send 2 letters, one to the commissioner of the IRS and one to the commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. So just like that's what they do a double impersonation scheme for everything. So there's a territorial and a municipal side to everything. So there's an IRS and there's an Internal Revenue Office, same thing. So we say, Dear Commissioner, this letter is to inform you and to state that I revoke my election to pay federal income taxes as of, and you can go back 10 years. I made the mistake that I needed to do so, having determined that I was never actually a volunteer warrant officer in the Merchant Marine Service, and clearing the confusion about what a withholding agent was, and now knowing that I am not a withholding agent and never have been when I had previously signed 1040 and other federal tax forms, I now revoke my election to pay any federal income taxes from the above date and going forward. So that's it. These documents are already there, and they're all you have to do is just plug in your information. So depending on the document, the land recording system has been made, very high, new age, I would say. So all you're gonna have to type is, depending on the document, a couple things. One might say, name, one might say, born state, born city, that sort of thing. You just fill that in and then make sure you read your document before you print it to make sure that there's no typos. It might say his or her, instead of his or her, something simple like that. All right, so that's the revocation of election to pay taxes. Okay. So then we'll also do, if you were born in a state of the Union, if you were born on this land and soil, you would have, and you were trafficked into their foreign jurisdiction through licenses and birth certificates, you'll need to reconvey your name to the land and soil. Let's say you are, you're from Mexico, or you're from Canada, or you're from Greece, and, you've been here 5 years, and, you haven't committed any actual crimes, meaning, there was actual loss of injury or harm to another. You haven't really committed an actual crime. If you haven't committed any crimes, even if you weren't born on this land and soil, after a certain amount of years, you're obviously eligible to become an American state national. So at that point, if you weren't born and press ganged, you would just get a deed of conveyance. But for most of us were born here, and we were just press ganged into a foreign jurisdiction. So we need to do a deed of reconveyance. So the purpose of that is you're reconveying all names and capital names, corporate names, from any presumption of being dead or lost at sea, and firmly establishing them on the soil. It also releases us from any presumption that we have authorized to the corporations any power of attorney, executorships, guardianships, or agency relationships, and firmly establishes that we are the sole living owner, executor, beneficiary, and agents of our name and estate since our 21st birthday. So I'm going to read the deed of reconveyance. So, acknowledgement, acceptance, and deed of reconveyance. I, the living man, my name, being of age, of sound mind, and in good health, free of all duress or improper consideration, hereby acknowledge, accept, and reconvey my given lawful trade name. And of course, you want to always do, these birth certificate names, because that's the name that they use to traffic. So that's the name that you want to reconvey to the soil. Reconvey my given trade name, my full name, to the land and soil of New York, my native state, together with all derivative names, including And then it's going to have all the spellings of your name. However styled, punctuated, spelled, ordered, or otherwise represented as pertaining to me and my estate, and hereby declare their permanent domicile on the soil and land of New York. All prior powers of attorney, all other prior presumed or granted executorships, guardianships, and agency relationships are terminated and revoked, effective with my natural birthday, which mine is August 7th, as I 92, as I elect to be recognized as the sole living owner, executor, beneficiary, and agent of my name and estate since my 21st birthday. So said, so signed, and so sealed by my living hand this day. And then you sign it, all rights reserved, without prejudice. So that's the deed of reconveyance. And I just want to tell y'all what domicile means, the law definition. Domicile is relevant to an individual's personal law, which includes the law that governs a person's status and their property. It is independent of a person's nationality. Although a domicile may change from time to time, a person only has one domicile at any point in their life, no matter what their circumstances. So that's it. We see that it's relevant to what laws and rights and exemptions, govern our status and our property. So you obviously want to make sure that you're domiciled on the lawful jurisdiction, where you're a lawful person with, rights and exemptions and protections and safeties and ownership. So it's the deed of reconveyance. Sorry. We also do an oath of allegiance, act of expatriations, and these allow you to take control of your strawman names, right? All those three corporate names, those all capital letter names, and affirm that you are not a citizen of the corporation. You repatriate the strawman, right, the names, to your lawful trade name, as in man, woman standing on the soil of your state of domicile. So you're expatriating any allegiance for your state and trust names that you own, and affirming that you're not a citizen of the corporation. And then you're repatriating those names to your lawful name, so they become your property. And for that, like I said, if you have a middle name, we're all going to have three versions of these if we have if we have a middle name, because like I said, they do the first, middle, last, first, middle, initial, last, and then just first, last. So you want to make sure that you expatriate all those names from the corporation. So this one says, whereas, and remember, these names aren't us. They're legal fictions that they've used to, usurp our rights and basically transfer obligations and duties and codes and policies and procedures onto us legally. But they're not us, so we have to know that. It's just a name or an account that you own from this day forth once you've taken ownership. So whereas that name is a naturalized citizen of the United States under the diversity clause of the Constitution and is the age of majority, and whereas such citizenship was never desired, nor intended, nor willingly, nor voluntarily entered into conditions of full disclosure, that name willingly and purposefully renounces all citizenship or other assumed political status related to the United States, defined as the territories and District of Columbia, and its government, a corporation doing business variously as United States, all capital, United States of America, all capital, Municipal Corporation of the District of Columbia, etc., formed under the Act of 1877, and does repatriate to the land of his, right? His meaning that trust, not mine, the land of his birth, known as New York, and does freely affirm his allegiance to the same actual and organic state of the Union, and does accept and reclaim his true nationality as an American state national and an American state vessel in all international trade and commerce owned and operated by me. This action I validate, I certify, witness, and affirm this blank day. And then you sign and seal. And like I said, there's 3 different versions. So one's going to be first, middle, last. One's going to be first, middle, initial, last. One's going to be first and last. And it does all that, for you on the website. You just make sure that whichever name is printed on that line, if it's the one that's printed with the middle initial, you want to make sure that you autograph it with the middle initial. If it's the one that has the full middle name, you want to autograph it, accordingly. You want to make sure that you match whatever's on that byline. So we do a certificate of assumed names. And the certificate of assumed name is a very powerful document. It invokes our common law rights, transfer of reserved name, and filing of names when business is conducted under an assumed name. It uses these cession laws to transfer our strawman names into our true estate of a living man or woman standing on the soil of our domicile. It invokes the Article 4 Remedy clause of the Cestui V Act of 1666, which allows you to claim all of your assets, property, etc., free and clear of taxes, fees, liens, or any other encumbrance. It contains our writ of habeas corpus to ensure that the court jurisdiction realizes that we are alive and must deal with the live person and not confuse us with our straw man. It puts the corporation on notice that their oath and bond will be liened if they violate our rights in any way. It also contains our mandatory Foreign Sovereign Immunity Act, which states that the living soul is a foreign sovereign, owned all rights, guarantees, and protections to the Constitution for the United States of America. Sorry, let me just pull it up. Got it. Okay, so you'll see when you're looking at this document, it'll have your name. Sometimes it'll be in all caps. Sometimes it'll be the proper case, and that if it's in all caps, it just means that it's dealing with one of those strawman names. So it says at the top returnee, and then it has the my strawman certificate of ownership, providing for filing of names when business is conducted under assumed name. An act providing that when any business other than a corporation or limited partnership is conducted under assumed name, a certificate showing the real parties in interest shall be filed with the county clerk. And fixing a penalty 2 times to be deemed a public officer, you must produce and be vetted by the administrator of this document a letter of intent, a letter of compliance with all state and federal rules and regulations as prescribed by the Secretary of State, or any private person who does not properly identify themselves upon request by producing a business license, a UBI number, and a bond filled out in the cap name on this certificate are fined on the spot for $500 in consideration. My fee schedule, to be determined by the head administrator of this document as the time of engagement. So I also have a fee schedule. That's like the next level. Basically, if anyone wants to, because all these services, the reason they forced us into live playing this game is because they want to force us to contract with them at all times. So they want to force us to not only have to pay for services, but to have duties and obligations and codes and regulations and procedures at all times. So it's the opposite of freedom. So basically, once you've taken ownership of your name and once you know who you are, if any of these service providers want to force you to do business with them, I'll do business with you. But the only way I'll do business with you is if you sign this contract, because, I know where I stand now. So if I'm going to do business with my employee, I need to be provided, I need to be compensated for my time. Otherwise, I have no no interest or reason to even talk to these people, to any public service provider, unless I'm in need of service. So, whereas grantor is a Sesta KV trust, right? So the grantor is a straw man formed without the knowledge or consent of the grantee and has accumulated unauthorized debt against the estate benefiting secondary beneficiaries, merely presumed to assist and claiming to have an interest in the estate established under the municipal law of the District of Columbia, so it's color of law. The actual grantee, the living man, known to the public as me, my name, invokes the provisions of Article 4 of the Sesta KV Act of 1666 as one having been found to be alive and to be owed all benefit, control, and interest in the grantor trust estate, set free and clear of all liens, debts, titles held under color of law, tithes, fees, and all other encumbrances established by all these corporations, and any and all other franchises thereof ab initio, from the date of first registration of the trust, and any and all other derivatives thereof, and it says all the spellings of my name, any and all other styles, punctuations, orders, abbreviations, or variations of my trade name. Registration reason, reinstatement of actual holder in due course of estate name and estate property and all interest due. Public and private recognition of grantor as holder in due course and lawful entitlement holder of foreign grantor trust named, my name, as of August 7th. So the business information. So there's a legal entity, an heir grantee, a private, public, and signature trust. That business description, their commerce. Grantor, private, public, and signatory. Their DBA, their business names. They do business as, and then it's all my names, all those derivatives, however they've done it. Okay. This certificate is to conduct business in commerce in an assumed name designed to accompany new business account registration, if so desired, or to conduct business in international trade. So this certificate is to conduct business in commerce in an assumed name designed to accompany new business account registration. So anytime if you want to conduct commerce and you want to register a new business, you make sure that you do it using this certificate, if so desired, or you use it to conduct business in international trade. And remember, Washington only has the power and the authority to regulate commerce. So we, as living men and women, would rather deal in unincorporated international trade, where we don't owe anybody anything. And as long as we don't harm another, his rights or property, we don't have any obligations or duties or rules, It'll be our business completely, our wealth, our income, everything. I am claiming the writ of habeas corpus to institute and maintain actions of any kinds in the courts of this state while maintaining true domicile on the land of these United States to take, hold, and dispose of property either real, intangible, or personal held in the name of the foreign trust, DBA, my name, all capitals, together with all derivative names, all capitals, and names, normal, and styles thereof, with guarantee of prepayment and exemption from taxes, tithes, and fees, together with reconveying all actual assets rightfully belonging to the lawful holder in due course. Under the form of creating a qualification or attaching a condition, the United States and the United States of America, however styled or construed, cannot in effect inflict a punishment for a past act which was not punishable at the time it was committed, and which was not the knowing, willing, and consensual act of the actual holder in due course of the given name and estate. All violators, agents, actors under color of law, and actions under color of law of authority claimed by any corporations, associations, subcontractors, agencies, or agents of any kind, or like violating or attempting to violate the political status and title holder of the grantee at any time, past, present, or future, shall be liable severely, and joint to this certification as an affidavit of obligation in the normal commercial sense, and as much and as such is a severity representing accounts receivable, and is a lien upon the real and movable property, malpractice insurance and performance bonds of any such violator, and is not dischargeable in bankruptcy court or subject to any probate court. At all times, the owner / holder in due course, this property is exempt from third-party levy, and all related vessels in commerce and in trade are tax prepaid. This shall also serve as mandatory notice required under Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that the living soul, owner, proprietor, holder in due course, indemnity is a foreign sovereign, owed all rights, guarantees, and protections of the Constitution for the United States of America, and all assets owed to the priority creditors of the territorial United States and the municipal United States. This foreign sovereign, my name, returns all rights in reversion and is not subject to any conference of citizenship or other merely presumed benefit or obligation. So signed and sealed. A very powerful document. We also do a cancellation of all prior powers of attorney. So all prior powers of attorney granted by you are removed, canceled, and permanently revoked, effective as of the date of signing. Removes all known and unknown powers of attorney, as sometimes this can be embedded in documents or adhesion contracts. This is also included in the deed of reconveyance. We saw that. So this is just a little small, short version. Cancellation of powers of attorney, just extra protection. All prior powers of attorney granted by my name are revoked, removed, canceled, and permanently revoked effective my birth date, ab initio. I am the attorney, in fact, for all purposes related to the administration of my names, estates, and all correspondence should be addressed to me. So signed and sealed this date. We do the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, which puts the corporation on notice that you are not any part of the federal, territorial, or municipal corporation, or acting in that capacity in any way, that you are standing on the soil since your nativity, under common law, and are owed the law of peace. Any harm resulting from trespass upon these vessels, or the use of fictitious names or titles related to them, shall be subject to full commercial liability and penalties. 18 U.S.C. 2333, 18 U.S.C. 1341, and 1342. Excuse me. This is probably my personal favorite. You know, when I remember reading this, I was like, wow, this thing existed since 1976. Crazy, all the stuff they hide from us. So that's why we gotta not spend all our time, you know, just chasing a beer, a blowjob, and a buck. You know what I'm saying? We gotta spend some time communing and growing and planting and you know, getting healthier and learning and just making good habits. You know, that's it. So this is the mandatory notice. Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, Section 1605 and 1607. This mandatory notice is provided to all territorial United States, district and state and county courts, their officers, clerks, bailiffs, sheriffs, deputies, and employees, and all municipal appointees, including their district, state, and county courts, their officers and employees. And remember, they double dip, like I said. So anytime you see territorial, it'll be spelled uppercase, lowercase. And then anytime you see municipal corporation, it'll be all capitals. So that's how you tell the difference. But both corporations. The vessels doing business as my name, and not limited to, all derivatives and permutations and punctuations and orderings of these names, are not acting in any federal, territorial, or municipal capacity, and have not knowingly or willingly acted in such capacity since the day of nativity. All vessels are duly claimed by the holder in due course and held under published common law copyright since August 7th, 92. These vessels are publishing mandatory notice that they are foreign sovereigns from New York, a member state of the United States of America, unincorporated. This is your mandatory notice that these above-named vessels are owed all material rights, duties, exemptions, insurances, treaties, bonds, agreements, and guarantees, including indemnity and full faith and credit. You are also hereby provided with mandatory notice that these vessels are not subject to municipal or territorial United States law, and are owed the law of peace. Department of the Army pamphlet 27-161-1, from all territorial and municipal officers and employees who otherwise have no permission to approach or address them. Any harm resulting from trespass upon these vessels or the use of fictitious names or titles related to them shall be subject to full commercial liability and penalties. Said, so signed, and so sealed by my living hand. DNA paramount claim. This is one of the most important ones as well. They're all important. They all, like you guys can see, they all take back, biological property, intellectual property, spiritual property, tangible property, intangible property, rights, exemptions, insurances, indemnity, good faith. You're doing nothing but basically just taking back, who we are, and then just putting on the record, who we are, what we're owed, and what has nothing to do with us. And for the most part, what has nothing to do with us has dictated and judged, most of our lives. And for a lot of us, has ruined a big chunk of our life, through our neighbors acting under color of law and trespassing on our rights and on our property in a way that caused us, injury and harm, money, probation, legal fees, taking off work, court battles, fights with family members and with those around us, all for stuff that actually, had nothing to even do with us. And that's something that someone had no right to even speak to us about. In what world do I hire somebody and they have the authority to administrate my property without right and to trespass on my rights? In no world. This is it's very simple. And it's very clear that, everything's upside down. And, when we know it, that's it. We can call it out. And then there should be no reason for people to get away with it, or to continue to act this way. And even our brothers and sisters, there's no excuse for us to allow them to be, trespassed and trampled on this way. So that's why we got to make sure that we spread this truth and this knowledge. So the DNA paramount claim. The false probate of estates, the contracting with minors, the false claims of guardianship, the false claims of abandonment, pauperism, claims of legal death, and claims of commonwealth interest in the estates of infant decedents does go all the way back to the Church in the Middle Ages. It vastly predates the Sesta KV Act of 1666, which I think I'm going to put the link so if y'all want to look into that as well. Did you know that unless you specifically ask for it back, the hospital seizes upon the placenta as property and retains it? They also claim the DNA found in the placenta, our DNA, as abandoned property. Then that gives them the right, purportedly, to claim your right down to right down to your hair and fingernails. Like all other such claims, it's fraudulent, non-disclosed theft, and crime against babies and new mothers. But if you don't come back and claim your DNA, their false claim in commerce stands. This is becoming ever more important and critical to claim as the move is on to create biological ID, devices, cards, readers, etc., for use in banking and government. And obviously, if they have already claimed your DNA, they can claim any assets attached to that DNA. So, let's do a DNA paramount claim. Okay. Paramount claim of the life and estate of my name, born August 7th, 92, in, whatever city, state I was born. And then it says my parents' name, wedded, their wedding day, in, wherever they were wedded. Whereas I, the living man, known as my name, am the result of the life and the love and physical embodiment of my parents. Think about that. Whereas I, the living man, known as my name, am the result of the life and the love and the physical embodiment of my parents. The living man known as Cristo and the living woman known as Eleni, who were lawfully wedded in Greece in the calendar year, doesn't matter. Now therefore I am their living son from the moment of conception and from the first combining of their unique genetic code to create my unique genetic code and my zygote in support of my physical embodiment, then and now, and as I am the only true and surviving inheritor, I hereby publish my claim and recording of the facts. You hear how powerful that first paragraph was? So I am the result of the life, love, and physical embodiment of my parents. So, what they look like, what they eat, what they drank, what type of sun and what type of things they were ingesting whenever they had me, how happy were they, what was their mindset, what was their mental health like, what was their physical health like, all these things, including, their unique makeup, is what makes, what made me. So that's completely in of itself, Think about how many billions of different experiences each and every person has. So when they met, only they in that moment could have created me in that moment. So for anyone to say that, we're all the same and that, we're not unique, and I mean, that's just, you're really throwing dirt on your own name, because, we are very unique. We are trillions times different than the next person. A brother or sister or a best friend of mine can be, my twin in 50% of the time, and the rest, they could be polar opposites. So we really are amazing and unique and one of a kind. And, we are creators, and, we are divine in our own right. The afterbirth composed of a placenta, umbilical cord, and fetal tissues, which accompanied me into this world and which was in my possession of my DNA, was never a viable, separate living organism, and was instead a portion of my flesh, akin to any hair, skin, or other representation of my genetic content that was not abandoned, not donated, and not returned to me or my parents for burial. No separate estate, living status, ownership interest, or death apart from my own life may be claimed in behalf of the afterbirth or other waste resulting from my birth, from the shedding of my hair, my shedding of skin, the deposit of my fingerprints, or any other DNA containing substance whatsoever. I hereby establish my paramount claim upon my unique DNA as the only lawful and living inheritor thereof from the moment of conception forward, and I also publish my nullification of any claim of ownership or material interest in my DNA based upon samples procured from any bodily waste or substance for any purpose. So this is what they do, guys. When mothers are very vulnerable, they just had a baby in the hospital. They take a little bit of hair, they take a little bit of skin, they take like a footprint or a handprint, and they take maybe a drop of blood or a little bit of from that a little bit of the placenta, whatever's left, and they basically give it to the coroner, and they say, oh, this one didn't make it. And then when they sign that birth certificate, they're like, well, someone's got to take care of this estate. So what we'll do is we'll hold on to it until the parents come and claim it. And of course, we don't know that this is happening, so we never claim it. And we'll elaborate that further. We're going to do the dead baby scam next time. I just want to talk more about, what happens when we're press ganged. So did you know that common law was replaced with British equity law? In 1954, common law was replaced with British equity law. Thus, the takeover of the American courts was complete. There's no justice, only administrative and statutory law, color of law, designed to extract fees, and fines from our strongmen. Walking into court is like walking into a casino. It's all rigged against us. Our goal is to stay out of their courts. We, the people, need to assemble. So, if you join your assembly and you correct your political status, you can help build your common law grand juries and your common law petite juries. And that's what's been missing for so long. People's courts. We shouldn't need to pay someone money and go to a room, with a judge and with a couple of attorneys, and we shouldn't have to, explain why we need this or why we need that, or why this doesn't apply to us or why this doesn't apply to that. The only reason for court is to file a claim, which means that some type of trespass has occurred. So this is actual and factual. If someone hasn't harmed you or, or trespassed against one of your rights, there's been no injury, uh, and there's no claim to be assessed. So, like 99% of the things that are crimes nowadays are, in no way a crime. They don't even exist. They're just creations of the mind. So that's why we have to bring back these people's courts. If you have the right to life, liberty, and property, if you have the right to travel, I mean, we shouldn't be going to court for traffic citations. We shouldn't be going to court for marijuana or, possession of firearm. I mean, you have the right to bear arms. A firearm is a tank or a cannon, regardless. That's not an arm, and regardless, you have that right. So we have to know who we are and what we're owed. And in addition to that, we have to start, acting in our proper capacity. So we're supposed to be acting as, fiduciaries. We're supposed to be, think about it, if all these people work for us, if all these people are providing us with service, who is their boss? All of us. So it's up to us to provide those checks and balances and, to provide, to make sure, to provide that oversight, to keep them in line, to hold them accountable when needed. And in addition to that, it's actually all our jobs to protect all our neighbors, all our property, all our assets, all our rights. It's each and every one of our duty and jobs. And if we don't do it, we see where we end up. And that's the problem. I'm not blaming anybody, our parents, grandparents, great grandparents, but for whatever reason, ignorance of the law and not standing up and not spreading truth and not, communing together and having these people's courts have led us to where we are today. And, we see where we are today. America's not, what America's supposed to be. No one has their rights. People are paying 60, 70, 80% of their income, and they're not even federal employees. People don't have the right, to breathe freely, or the choice, of whether or not they want to, inject themselves with something man-made, some type of foreign GMO material that was man-made and completely unnatural. I mean, in what world can you decide what I do with my temple? This is my vessel. This is my body. I was given, the divine spark of free will. I mean, that's it. No one can decide anything for me as long as I don't harm another or their property. So in the next video, we're going to talk about the dead baby scam. And the next video after that, we're going to talk about blood money. And then the third video, we'll talk about courts. So I appreciate you guys tuning in again. If you want to know more, like I said, you can always reach out to me. I'm going to provide the links at the bottom. Do your due diligence. Spend some time, learning and reading and understanding. And, give it time. But, take a step back. Read what you read and just take a step back and think about it at the big picture. Because, even the simplest of things like just finding the word unconstitutional. Like me finding that one word applies to like 99% of situations in the world. And if I don't know to call it out, then that's it. It doesn't apply. So we just need to know, we need to make sure that we armor up. The proper armor is knowledge, truth, and confidence, because when you break that fear, that false evidence appearing real, when when you're unfettered and unwavered and unbothered and uneasily manipulated and controlled, it's like everything's a facade. Like 99% of the things I hear going on nowadays, people are arguing about this and that and this and that, and they're both, not understanding the big picture. They're both not realizing that, it's irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that this one, this man or woman was the employee, this man or woman was the employer. Where did it go wrong? How can we fix it? Great. But instead, they got us arguing about colors and about all this other crap, and just anything to keep us divided. So we're gonna make sure that we, band together, grow strong, mind, body, and spirit. We put our all into everything we do, and that's it. From now on, we gotta spend some time evaluating what really matters. I mean, how long are we just gonna, you know, spend our little 1 or 2 or 3 hours a day after work that we have doing things that don't matter, not making ourselves healthier, not making ourselves, more spiritually and um, I guess you could just say, physically, stronger and more toned and healthy, up to date as we should be. We should be the best version of ourselves at all levels. We should be the healthiest version of ourselves, the strongest version of ourselves, the safest version of ourselves, the most critical thinking version of ourselves, all of that. And all it takes is putting some effort in and thinking. When you think, how can I be more efficient in this? That's it. You give yourself answers. When you let someone else tell you how to be more efficient, I mean, you don't learn because you don't think, and it requires some self-reflection. All these things. Don't get me wrong. 7 months ago, I was nowhere, near the mindset that I am now. Now I realize that, like I said, like everything's upside down. Everything's designed to just keep us, distracted and confused and disorganized and unassembled. So, it's time to assemble. We know what we have to do. We got to correct our political status so that we're not legal persons. We have to make sure that we're a lawful person, that we own all our property, we own all our names, we own all our estates, we own all our rights, we own all our safeties and protections. And then after that, we know who we are. These conversations don't have to be smart or hard. It's just simple. Are you one of the people, or are you one of the people that works for the people? Very simple. And if you're one of the people that works for the people, if you're even gonna talk or complain or cite or whatever, you need to make sure that you know who you're talking to, and you need to make sure that a crime has been committed, that there's an injured party, that there's a right has been violated, and if not, you need to know that you're acting under color of law. So I would love to have conversations. If anyone knows any cops, nurses, doctors, attorneys, paralegals, um, firemen. I would love to have a conversation with all of our public servants. I want to see, who's on the same page, who's a proper and upstanding, employee, and who's just, who thinks that when they clock in a job, they somehow gain authority over all their neighbors. Because, these are the conversations we need to have. We obviously it's clear that these people aren't, they're not getting the proper information. No problem. Like I said, they're our neighbors. So when properly informed, if at that point they, choose to take it in a way that's belligerent or irrational or harmful or violent, they need to know that, if they trespass on another's rights, there's consequences. And, that's the shame of the matter. The shame of the matter is that for most of the situations, the people actually being trespassed against are the people. And they're the ones that are owed, good faith, credit, their rights and exemptions, their freedoms. They're owed the law of peace. So that's why, we just got, like I said, we got to correct the record. And we need to start having these people's courts again. So we're going to talk that in the next few videos. And remember, this is Nico on this video, but this is not just Nico bringing forth this truth. The assemblies are growing. All 50 states are in session. There's many Georgians who have already corrected their political status, and they're already, in the process of correcting and reconstructing the proper lawful government. The thing is that all people of Georgia are the government. So people need to realize that. People need to realize I'm either free and I make my own decisions, or and I hold those that work for me accountable and I know my rights, or I'll be treated as an employee, dependent, ward of the state, political asylum seeker, you know, someone with duties, obligations, codes, policies, procedures, rules, regulations, orders, mandates, and, all the rest of the stuff that's just color of law. It's just something that some guy made up, and, people, the mob ran with it. And, it's a shame, but it's all right because now that we know, we can fix it. So keep spreading truth, keep learning. Like I said, reach out to me if y'all need any help. Other than that, make sure you reach out to your coordinator. And definitely, man, start getting started on correcting your political status. Make sure you take ownership of your names and your states and your property and your rights. Because, if you don't have any, that's the worst thing. And if you got them, hey, even if somebody trespasses on you, it's okay because they'll be held liable, and we'll make sure of it. And like I said, the more people come home and learn the truth, and the more, like I said, the more conversations we could set up with our employees, the better it'll get. So it can either be a collective effort, or people can be like, who cares? What's the big deal? Don't really think I have time to do any of that stuff. And well, we see where that'll get us. It'll just take us down a further dark path towards more robbing, more raping, more pillaging, more stealing our babies, stealing our property, and that's not where we want to be. So again, sorry y'all, I'm going off on this rant. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all at the next video.